Hi, my name is Priya, and I just wanted to go over a very brief slide really about what is happening within your teenage child's brain and body. So as you know, adolescence is a time when there's a lot of different things going on, biological, physical, emotional, intellectual, and very many of us don't realize the importance of it, even though we went through it ourselves not too long ago maybe, but then we don't remember all those changes that happened and the effect that it had on our parents. So the brain, of course, is the most important part of your body, and it goes through enormous changes during adolescence. There is a release of so many different types of hormones, and endocrine glands are so active at this point in their life that it leads to all the development later, and anything that is unusual, all the excitement that you see, all the anxiety that you see, the stress, the reactions that they have to you are many times prompted by these biological changes. So it's important to recognize them and to know what they are. So as you know, the brain, and I have this nifty model, but I don't have as much time to explain it as I usually do. So if you look at your fist and form a fist, the bottom part of your hand is really where the reptilian brain is, which is what you're born with. And that part of your brain really controls all your involuntary actions like breathing and heartbeat and movement. But then your midbrain, which is this part of your palm, the middle of your palm, if you can imagine, that is your limbic system. And that is what regulates your emotions and your memories and things that develop in childhood. The top part, if you form a fist like this, is your prefrontal cortex. And that is what really controls your decision-making abilities, the ability to reason, the ability to question, the ability to develop moral values, all those things, impulse control, they come much later, and they happen in adolescence. Some kids get it earlier and some kids get it later. In fact, the brain is supposed to be developing all the way through your 20s, and nowadays they say that even you could be 30 and still developing your brain. So it's important to recognize that these changes are what leads to your child's behavior that you see right now, and to the stress that sometimes accompanies teenage years.
Thank you, Priya. So we heard a little bit about the biological changes that happen for our teenagers. We also heard a little bit about the hormonal changes that happen. So we have to remember that here we have children that are growing. We often joke that they're eating us out of house and home. So their bodies are growing rapidly. They're having all kinds of growth spurts. Their hormones are kicking in. Their voice is developing. They're growing bodily hair. They're going through puberty. So there's a lot of changes that they are going through, and all of this causes a lot of stress for them. Besides these biological changes, hormonal changes, we also have to remember that they're also changing psychologically and emotionally, right? They're developing those parts of their personalities as well. So there is a psychologist by the name of Erik Erikson, some of you might be familiar with his work. He came up with a model of stages of development, psychological development. And according to him, between the ages of 12 and 18 is when they are in the stage that is characterized by the struggle of developing your identity versus role confusion. So they are in the stage where they're in between childhood and adulthood. And in that stage, they're trying to figure out who am I, or who do I want to become, and what is expected of me. So while they are trying to figure themselves out, there could be role confusion as to what they want to become. And at this stage, they are vulnerable to experiment different kinds of lifestyles. So this might be the time when they engage in risky behaviors or question you, they develop rebellious attitudes towards you, and you as parents may want them to behave in a certain way, and not give them enough explanations of why you want them to behave this way. But they come from their end, they just don't want to be told to do something. They want to figure it out for themselves. So they have some moral values that we are giving them as parents, but they also have information, and they're observing, and they are developing their own ethics as well. So this is a time when we really need to watch them and have those communications open, so that we are giving them the right values and understanding where they are coming from. So in terms of being socially they may misperceive some of the social cues. They may be socially awkward, so we have to understand where they're coming from and meet them where they are. As far as parents are concerned, we have, all parents want our children to succeed, so we are trying to push them academically and as well as, socially, we want them to behave in certain ways. And so, we have also culturally, we want them to be close to our families. So we come from systems where we have family connections and we want them to have those connections, develop those connections as well. And they may not be willing to do that. For them at this point, their friends may be more interesting to hang out with rather than extended families. So we have to understand that and negotiate that with them. Also, this is the time when they want to have their own independence. They want you to not pry into what's going on with them. So, if they are trying to keep their emails private or their Facebook private, you then don't trust them, right? You want to know what is it that they're doing that they don't want us to see. So there is this attitude from the parents' point of view that we are suspicious of what they're doing and we distrust them. Also, we may not have enough information about substance use, and we may not know all the things that are out there that are available to our children. And we need to have those talks with our children and with the peers that they are hanging out with to know what it is that they are doing in the free time that they are hanging out with people. And we also may have concerns about their moral development. So are they doing things that are right for them? Who's to judge what is right and wrong? So those are some of the things that are concerns for parents.
Right now, Priya and Sudha gave us a nice description of sort of what's happening at the biological level for our children, at the hormonal level, structurally in the brain, and also what's happening socially for them, both within the families that they're growing up in, as well as with their friends in the larger school community, in their extracurricular activities. So you can apply some of the stuff you've heard in each of those settings and see how much they're actually processing at this time. And as you may all know, as we process and grow, we have transitions, right? We may remember our own childhood from getting, being very dependent on our parents to starting to develop independence. And sometimes we can get stuck, as Sudha described, in a developmental stage. What happens when we get stuck is sometimes our needs are not getting met. And you can imagine in our own social milieu that we are growing up with technology increasing, with less time with our children. Basically, most of our time may be spent, driving them to activities back and forth. That's where you might have your 5 minutes to check in for the day. These are the moments that we need to utilize, because what happens is we end up having a lot of different psychological disorders that pop up right at this time. It's a very critical time. Transition from middle school to high school, but then high school to college is another time when we see the rise in diagnosed mental disorders. Now, why are we telling you about mental disorders? In a group of 100 people, something serious like schizophrenia, we're not going to talk much about it today. Maybe 5 families would deal with that. About 10 to 15 families may be dealing with actual major depression, which we're going to go over today. And then maybe another 20% will deal with anxiety. But all of us, including our children, deal with some of the symptoms that may end up clustering together that may cause a disorder, okay? So as you look through this, what do we mean by depression? Depression is something that you could go through for a day where it's like, I got a D on my test and I was depressed. That's how we use that term colloquially. But as a professional, the way we use that term is that it's a mood disorder that ends up disrupting our natural rhythm and what we're able to accomplish in our life. And the way that we diagnose it is that we want to see these symptoms happening for over 2 weeks, and they're persistent. It's not just one day I didn't sleep and I was irritable. Okay, that happens to everybody, but that irritability comes with lack of sleep for 2 weeks, comes with not eating, comes with not being excited, losing interest in things that I was interested in. if you see these symptoms clustering, then you have more of a major depression. So I want you to just notice in your families, with your children, when do these symptoms kind of pop up? We just need to be aware of them so that if we notice them kind of clustering, it becomes an issue. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is go to handout number 1. In your packets, you have some charts, and what that shows. That's part 1. So the first chart looks like this, okay? There's 2 that look very similar, but the one we're going to work with first is labeled 1, and it's past year serious mental illness. Basically, serious mental illness are the symptoms like that, I shouldn't say symptoms, disorders that we talk about, like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, psychotic symptoms that may occur, psychosis being losing touch with reality. So as I said, you can see that the rates sort of have stayed the same over the last 5-6 years, okay? 3 to 4% both in New Jersey as well as the US. If you turn the page to page number 2, you will see the rates of major depressive episode. And what you see is that the rates are actually rising, both in New Jersey as well as nationally. And that's something that we should be aware of, just to understand that something's happening in our environments that may be leading to this, right? And so we need to be a little more aware. It's a red flag for us to try to prevent this from happening. And the second part of our presentation today will be helping us figure out ways that we can prevent this from happening in our families. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to go over is slide number 3, if you notice in your handout, is the past year mental health service use. And that's for serious mental illness, and page 4 is past year mental health use for major depression. And what you notice is only about 40% of people who have these disorders, who've been diagnosed by a professional, actually receive treatment. 60% never actually either get diagnosed or don't follow through with treatment. And that's when we see the seriousness of these disorders increasing, and that's when we see a lot of times some of the negative outcomes that you may hear about in the news, whether it's a death from a suicide, increased substance use among our teenagers. These rates are rising because we as a society are not noticing these patterns. So like I described, it starts very sort of normal, right, in our homes where somebody has a bad day, but it's when those bad days kind of add up and nobody's noticed and nobody's intervened that we can see this becoming more serious over time. So today I hope when you leave here that you will feel more empowered to go back into your families and listen to your children, look for the symptoms that we're talking about, and if you have questions, reach out to us. At the end, we'll be giving out lots of resources too about information about psychiatric symptoms, but also where you can get help in just parenting, things like that. Okay, next slide. So I just wanted to go over quickly some facts about suicide. 90% of individuals who commit suicide actually have a mental illness. Now, mental illness can also include things like depression, obviously, serious mental illness, schizophrenia, when you're feeling paranoid, paranoia being an unrealistic fear that somebody's out to get you. You may do something out of that anxiety that you think you're protecting yourself, but you could take your life in that situation, right? The way that you're thinking is altered. Substance use, obviously you're more impulsive, you're more likely to take actions that you wouldn't had you not been using substances. So all of these things kind of start clustering together. And we want you to know that warning signs including increased substance use, people starting to become more aggressive, more impulsive, just in their daily interactions, withdrawing from the family, and having dramatic mood swings. So these are things just to keep in mind. Okay, next. You can see that the national statistics, like we went over in the charts already, but basically they are on the rise. So that's something that is, at the policy level, people are thinking about it more. You can see that suicide is the second leading cause of death for adolescents and adolescents, including those ages 10, 11, and 12, so even our preteens, the second leading cause of death is suicide. So you're seeing younger and younger kids deciding to take their life because they do not see a way out. And when they've done research into suicide, what they realize is that the people who choose this actually were never told that things were going to get better. You know, no one actually just stopped them and said, yes, that was a bad day, that was a bad week, it's been a bad year, but things will improve. That perspective we get as adults. You know, again, as Priya described, their frontal lobes aren't completely developed. They haven't had a chance to experience life the way that we have as adults. So they need adults. They need somebody looking out for them to explain to them, give them that perspective about what's yet to come, you know, that things are not going to stay this bad all the time. In New Jersey, you can see that it's, again, similar rates of both depression, serious mental illness, and the suicide rates. Next. Okay, now, Sudha's going to talk about anxiety disorders, including eating disorders. Then Priya's going to go over substance abuse, and then we're going to talk about some coping mechanisms that you guys can utilize in your families, and then you'll hear back from me about the communication training.
Thank you, Aparna. So we've talked about depression. Another very common mental disorder is anxiety. And anxiety really is a normal reaction to stress, right? Who among us hasn't had anxiety at some point in our life or not? In some ways it's good because it helps us, you know, prepare for something that we need to prepare for. But when it becomes a disorder is when you have it persistently, and that becomes your way of dealing with things. So you're experiencing an enormous number, overwhelming amount of fear or nervousness, or you know, you're unable to deal with it in a normal way. So that makes you avoid certain situations. So maybe you are so anxious that you don't want to go to school anymore, or you aren't able to go to work because, you know, going there makes you anxious, meeting people makes you anxious. So these are the things that are described as an anxiety disorder. So in general, it's a fear and anxiety and nervousness that keeps you from being functional in life. And if again, like depression, if it persists for more than 2 weeks, that's when we label it as a disorder. It's one of the most common mental health disorders, and the good news is that it's treatable. So like depression is one of those disorders that has, you know, you can treat with medication, with talk therapy, with good life coping skills that you can practice. So that's the good news. It's very common. Among teenagers, it's, I had a statistic somewhere that about 25% of teenagers go through social anxiety, particularly. So these words, you know, they're already going through a lot of things, stressors in their life, biologically, psychologically, emotionally, and then they have anxiety, which is keeping them from, you know, being functional. And that becomes like a life skill, the way that they live their lives. So it's a debilitating thing. So knowing the signs of that and treating it, getting them help is something that we can do as parents now, teaching them ways to cope with it. I also want to talk a little bit about eating disorders. It's something that it's not a trend, it's not a phase of life, it's not a lifestyle choice. It is something that is there genetically, that people who have eating disorders, they will indulge in either abstaining from eating, that is they don't eat enough, so their body weight is much dangerously low, or they will eat and then purge, so they will eat enormous amounts of food, which is called binge eating, and then they induce themselves to throw up or give up that food. So these are very maladaptive behaviors that people have, when eating disorders have. And it's life-threatening. It's something that we need to take seriously. We see our children showing any kind of signs, and some of those signs might be that they're choosing low-calorie foods, or they're exercising excessively, or they're really checking their body, repeatedly. And so this is a time when, teenagers are very conscious of how they look and how they're perceived by others. And so they may, want to look a certain way and indulge in, eating behaviors that are really maladaptive. So this is something to remember, that it's not something like to let go.
Yeah, and to wrap up this section really, I'm going to be talking about substance abuse. So substances are something that teenagers like to experiment with, and because they're in that stage of their life where they want to try new things and try new experiences, and we all remember our own teenagers when things were pretty exciting because we wanted to try new experiences. This is part of that too. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, these substances are no longer the ones that we knew like 30 years ago. So things have changed, and it's very important for as parents to not only recognize signs and symptoms of overuse, but also to recognize what these substances are and to know them. Because when you want to have a discussion, or if the conversation comes up with your child, you don't want to seem out of touch, because then it's much harder for them to have that talk with you. So you want to be able to know what these are. You want to be able to know what their effects are. You want to be able to have that kind of a conversation with your child where you can describe what the long-term consequences are of getting into that kind of a habit. And so, just to be brief, there are different types of substances. They're classed in many different ways, but primarily you can think of them as things that take you up, like a stimulant, which gives you extra energy and keeps you up and doesn't let you go to sleep and doesn't let you eat enough and keeps you going like an Energizer bunny kind of thing. Or a depressant, like alcohol is a depressant, where you drink in order to lower your inhibitions and to make you more sleepy, or you think that you're not able to sleep, so you need to take something like a Xanax, and then you get hooked on to something else, some other substance that you're not prescribed for. And the really dangerous part of our country right now is that, I'm sure as all of you read about, the heroin opioid epidemic that is overtaking the country is a really sad but really true epidemic. It is not just limited to areas or places that you would think are dangerous or where your kids are not going. It is actually in the suburbs, and it's very much in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York. So it is something to really keep your mind out for. Like, read about it, know what the symptoms are, recognize what substances look like, what are the signs that you can think of which would give you a clue that somebody is using. And it's very important for you to do this because I don't want it to sound scary, but substance use is really something that teenagers use as a coping mechanism. So if you can think about it that way, it's not as stigmatizing. If your child is going through something that is really stressful and really difficult for them to talk to you about or to get help, they are often drawn to this because it's seen as a recreational activity. It's seen as something that will pull you out of your bad mood and put you in a different place. So these mood-altering substances are things that are easy to have access to, incredible as that may sound in Princeton, New Jersey. It is very easily accessible. It is very much in the schools and in communities. And your children should know the dangers that are associated with this and know that they're able to talk to you and have a conversation with an adult that they can feel safe with. Because this is really the crux of the next thing that we're going to do, which is talking about how you can communicate. And knowing that this is a negative coping habit might actually help you to understand what are positive coping habits. So it's important to know those not just for your child, but for yourself. Because what you do and what you are experiencing and showing at home is what your child is going to really see. And that has the most powerful impact on your kids, is how you lead your life. So if you have good, positive coping habits, you can actually show that you can have habits or have lifestyles that are amenable to dealing with stress in a positive way. And when they see those, they pick them up. But before we get into it, I think we have one more slide on the red flags.
Yeah, so this is actually quite a self-explanatory slide, but I'll just quickly go through it. That when we see changes in the way our children are behaving at home, so are they sleeping a little more than they normally do? Are they sleeping a little less? Are they staying up all night? We don't know what they're doing because they want to maintain their privacy. We want to make note of those changes. So the changes in sleep patterns, loss of self-esteem. So are they coming and saying that I'm not good for anything? You know, people don't like me, and then they put themselves down in a lot of ways. They are exhibiting signs of sadness which could develop into depression. We do want to check in to see where their levels of self-confidence are. Abandonment and loss of interest in pastimes. So if they start doing some activities and then suddenly lose interest, that's something that's indicating something to you. There's a reason why they're doing that. And as parents, we want to have those communication skills open, communication lines open, to figure out why is it that they're not interested in it anymore, because there could be valid reasons for it. Obviously, a decline in academic performance is a red flag. So all of us, like I said, as parents, we want them to do well. So you see a slump in those grades, we don't want to just be all over them saying, why didn't you get this grade, and berate them for it. We want to find out why is it that it is slumping. Changes in weight, so gaining weight, losing weight suddenly, we want to keep an eye on that. What's triggering that? Is it an indication of an eating disorder? We want to keep an eye on that. Personality changes, so are they suddenly showing signs of aggression? Are they suddenly shying away from people? All those kind of personality changes that your child is changing from who they were. We want to keep an eye on that. And we want to keep an eye on their social networks. So who are they hanging out with? Who are their peers? Just having a pulse on what they're doing without being intrusive is something.
So I think the next few slides are just a few tips on positive coping mechanisms and things that you can promote at home. I'm sure all your kids are involved in some kind of extracurricular activity or two, but try to maintain at least one that is not competitive, that is not geared to having them excel and train and perform, but rather just do because they enjoy it. Even if it's a game of ping pong, or if it is, playing an outdoor game, playing board games, anything to distract them and to be able to have the right environment where you can have a conversation and be able to spend time with them. So things like that, even simple things, coping techniques like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough regular meals? Are you eating with the family? Are you able to sit down and do activities like maintaining relationships with your extended family? Does your child have a healthy, good relationship with an adult outside your immediate nuclear family? That could be a grandparent, it could be an uncle and aunt, a family friend, a cousin, somebody else, some other adult relationship where they feel secure and safe enough to have those kind of conversations with. So things like that. There are lots of different tips and lots of websites where you can get ideas for hundreds of coping techniques and ways to break the ice in conversations with your kids. But what's most important is that you practice those skills yourself, because then that gives your child, and I'll put in a personal plug in here because things that I have used that have worked for me are like developing a new skill or learning a new skill with your child can also be just as important. So whether it is going for a meditation workshop, or it's learning a new ballroom dancing or tai chi or whatever it is, pick something that your kid wants to do and do it with them, and that's a great relationship builder also.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about these coping strategies. I wanted to, since we're in the mood, to share. I have an 8th grader who I recently had this conversation with. She's very competitive. She always wants to do her best. So I had put her in soccer back in 4th grade, really more for physical exercise. But she is the kind of kid that pushes herself. She misses a ball, oh my goodness, after the game it's like tears, and I just let down the whole team, and she was really hard on herself, right? So one of the conversations we've had recently is whether she would try out for the freshman soccer team next year. And she got some feedback from an old coach who now teaches at our high school. He's the coach for the freshman team. So he told her, you're going to have to run a 6-minute mile, you're going to have to be able to show me these techniques. So now she starts thinking a little bit like, maybe this is more than I can handle with all the other academic things she's doing, etc. So it was a great opening for us to talk about how some of the things that we do competitively as kids is something, if you think about your own lives, right? the number of days that you can actually make it to the gym and exercise and how great you feel after that, that's really what I shared with her, is that there's no place in my schedule to be a competitive soccer player or a competitive frisbee player or whatever it is that I'm interested in, but that just being able to exercise and get away from all the stressors is a great way. So as Priya was saying, demonstrate in your own life how you deal with stress. And then something clicked in her. She's like, oh yeah, well maybe I'll try out for track where there's no tryout, she'll just run. And that will be a stress reliever for her. And in the meantime, she may actually get a 6-minute mile, right? So it's a win-win for her without having the stress of having to try out for the soccer team. So having those conversations and sort of clearing up some of the misunderstanding, because every day I'm taking her to soccer 3 to 4 times a week, and I'm putting that pressure on her because I'm like, oh, this better work out. You guys should win today. I may say something off the top of my head, and she takes that so personally and thinks that she should, perform at this perfect level. So I want you guys to be aware of the ways that we're communicating affect the way that our kids perceive what we want from them. Okay. So one of the skills that as therapists we all learned was something called active listening. Does anybody here know what active listening is? Just show me with the raise of your hand if you do. Yes, in the back. What is active listening?
It's listening and explaining, like kind of demonstrating that you are listening with verbal cues and physical mannerisms.
Yep, excellent. So for those of you who didn't hear, active listening is a way of listening that lets the speaker know that you're actually paying attention. I see some of you nodding your head as I'm talking. That's an excellent active listening skill to have. So I see some people practicing right now, making eye contact with the speaker. And these are things that, again, as our lives get busier, we don't do as well, right? We're not as connected to people as we used to be. So I want you guys to now think about, assessing for things like depression, events happening in your kid's life that may be stressful, that may be triggers for some of the disorders and difficult transitions that may be happening in their life. And I want you to think about how you can develop your communication skills. So active listening is very important. So obviously the physical way that we listen is important versus something called hearing, right? You're all hearing me talk, but some of you, like I said, are actively engaging in what I'm saying. Some people are taking notes. That makes me feel like, great, I'm an excellent speaker. So thank you for whoever's doing that. But there are ways with our kids that we can communicate to them that we actually not just heard them, but we're listening. The second thing is to remember that listening is not the same thing as agreeing. So what we want our kids, they're going through so many different stressors in their life, right? Situations that we may or may not have gone through ourselves in our adolescence. We want our kids to be able to express freely what it is that they're seeing. Did somebody make a heroin deal in the hallway in front of them? They've seen heroin and you haven't? That's a problem, right? Because we as parents are left then completely in the dark about what's going on in their day-to-day lives. So we want the point of active listening is for you to develop a communication system with them that's not just going to last from middle school to high school or high school to college, but really throughout their life. This is the time to build that. They're developing their own identity. You have an identity as a parent. Why not have that communication open? The number one thing that I remember from when I went to college was my mom, who had immigrated here from India, said to me, you are not going far from home for college. And the number one reason, and what she meant was not even 3 hours away. I grew up in upstate New York in Binghamton, and I wanted to go to Albany, which is exactly 3 hours away, but she refused. I got in, I got a scholarship, everything was great. I think had accepted their admission, but last minute, a week or two before school ended, she said, no, you're not going there. And I've already gotten you admission at the state school in our town. And it was a very scary time for me because I'm like, no, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But it was in that time that I learned that this is an extremely vulnerable time in our kids' lives, right? So each of you may have your own comfort level with letting your kids go, to a school 10 miles down the road or 3 hours away, or a whole day away, or out in California. That's something that each of you will figure out as your kids decide about going to college and moving out of the house. Those are decisions that will happen. But again, they happen through this active listening process that we're going to talk about. The next thing that's important is when you actively listen, your ultimate goal is to make them excellent problem solvers. You are not trying to solve their problems. So when you listen, you're listening for clues into what maybe some errors that they're making in attribution. So when my daughter was telling me that she messed up the entire team when she missed the ball that rolled right past her, I had to start questioning that black and white thinking that she has right now as an 8th grader. So you're the only person who messed up on that whole team. Like, the ball didn't roll past 4 other people before it got to you, right? And then she's like, well, yeah, but it's my fault. So she was still in that place, but it got her thinking a little bit. So as parents, we have to be aware of some of this black and white thinking that happens, and we want them to be able to then say, that's silly. Why am I blaming myself? There I go again, right? We do that as adults. We want our kids to be able to help sort of problem solve. How did we get into this situation? And the last thing, obviously, is that we want mutually beneficial relationships with our kids. We want these relationships to last into adulthood. Okay, so there's a few things that what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you a short video. It's a 1-minute clip, and it's of a mom and her daughter Megan. From there, we're then going to break out into groups of about 10. I think we'll have 5 groups of 10 and then another group of 6. So if you can sort of arrange yourselves together, leave some distance in between. And we have 6 of us out here who are going to be your group leader and tell you what you're going to do. We're going to watch the video. And then what I want you to pay attention to is Mom and Megan. It's only 1 minute, so you gotta pay attention. And look at the cues that you're looking at. Is there active listening happening? And how is Megan, as the child, as the adolescent, responding to her? So we'll play the video.
Mum?
Yes, Megan?
Remember the party I went to last week?
Yeah, Stacey's right.
Yeah. Well, there were a few kids there taking drugs and...
Drugs? Really? Sorry, go on.
Don't freak out. I tried some. I didn't like it. The others said that they were going to get more. Anyway, I didn't have any more.
But your friends did?
Yeah. There were older boys going around, offering it to people. I was actually pretty scared about it, but Stacey kept saying it was okay.
I'm really glad you told me about it, Megan. I'm a bit shocked, though. I'd like you to tell me more about what happened, and then I'd like us both to go and talk to Dad. Okay, darling?
Okay, I just don't want to get the others in trouble.
Don't worry about that now. I just need you to tell me a little bit more about what happened. What sort of drugs were they?
Well...
Show of hands, who wants to take a guess at how Megan's mom did in terms of active listening in that clip? Yes.
I think she was a good active listener. At first she wasn't because her back was turned, but she was engaged. A couple of things she might have done differently was not having her arms crossed. But I think she did a better job than I would have done.
I love insight. Having personal insight is the #1 way that we're going to develop these skills. And actually in our dyads, we'll figure that out with participation for all of us. So exactly, Megan's mom has shown us that, she stopped doing the laundry and she turned to her daughter as soon as she started talking about this. So that was excellent. Now, did anyone notice something that some of us, I don't think any of our parents did, nor do we ever think of doing it with our kids? Does anyone know what that is that I'm talking about? Yes.
First express
expressing approval the child, because the child came forward and opened up.
Yeah, that's a great point, that she does approve of the child coming forward, right? So she is letting the child know, no, I want to hear more. You haven't scared me. You haven't told me something that I don't want to hear. Of course, none of us want to hear this, but the mom is very clear that she wants more information. Why does she want more information? Because she, like all of us, would want to make sure that our children are safe, that this isn't the 11th time that this has happened, or it's been happening for 3 years and we weren't aware of it, right? So we want to be able to get as much information as possible from our child, because this is prime moments, right? We don't want to lose those moments when our kid comes and approaches us with information like this. But what ends up happening is that we end up scaring them away. And she was about to scare her daughter away when she started asking what, I don't remember exactly the words she used, but she had to apologize, right? What drugs, and why was that scary for Megan? Why did she hesitate at that moment to open up anymore? Does anyone know? Okay, so she's scared because she's feeling like mom might be a little bit judgmental. Like, what if I told her it was alcohol versus it was cocaine, whether it was heroin? Mom just went through and told me how bad heroin is, and now I'm telling her that there's heroin at this party. So kids are very, very sensitive to our reactions to what they're telling us. So mom apologized right away. And that's something that I never heard my parents ever do. But it's something that I think all of us should practice. Not all the time. You're not going to apologize for caring about them. You're not going to apologize for being worried about them. But there are times when our own anxiety kind of gets in the way of keeping the communication line open, okay? And that's when we apologize, because we want them to know that we're just figuring this out ourselves too. This is not something that, anyone has ever taught us before we became parents. Specifically, I want you to answer the question of what were the reactions of us as parents? So, Neetu, do you want to start with your group? We'll use a model. Therapist. Please be our model.
In our group, I think we talked about, we started with the issues of the drugs and how difficult that is, and then we got into the grades and how some people said that they, it's all relative, and now they think about physical health is much more important, and mental health as opposed to the grades, not giving as much importance, and talking to them about. Even when asking questions, like how do you ask them questions? Whether it's about the grades and the active listening part can be a little bit challenging, because sometimes you almost you feel like that you have to act on the impulse, when they tell you something and you're like, well, why did you do it, or how? And so it's difficult, but they have to learn, because that's the better thing to do, especially for their relationship with the kid. So they continue to come back to them and share more than just that's it, that's the end of it, and not talk any further. So it's really encouraging that relationship. What else? I'm just thinking. What else are we talking about?
One major aha moment here that we got.
Can you use the mic? Yeah.
Look, I just wanted to share, sorry, probably the
Loudest over here having low fun. But the aha moment here was respond versus react. And I thought that was useful. Do you respond or do you react? And how do you do that?
And if you want to share something, anything else from your group? Oh, that's right. And then Priya and Sudha.
And who was the last person? Was it Simran?
No, that was Sunita actually.
Oh.
So our group had some really very, very mature and active listening type of sessions. They were really, really impressive. But one in particular that stands out that I thought I would share is that one of the parents said that it should be also a physical sort of gesture of active listening, right? So if your daughter or your son is telling you something that is a little shocking or a little out of the expected, instead of drawing back, which we sometimes do automatically, it would be actually good if you learn how to move towards them, like maybe put an arm around them or sit down with them, take them to a corner where you can actually sit down and have that sort of conversation. So we talked a lot about strategies on how to build relationships.
Sudha?
We had a great group too. I think our group was more natural in their reactions of how they would actually feel if this was their child. So one of them felt that this mom was very easy on, very soft on her child, and if it had been her daughter, she would have come down really, really hard on her and said, here is it that I'm going to teach you safety rules and this is what you do. So he's saying, I would have really blasted her and I said, I'm going to stay in his house, I'm going to stay with his mom, and you're forbidden from doing this, that, and the other. It is actually not right. I sort of know so that they should even get it. So another person felt that, they reading through the script, they felt that already they know that this child had something. They came to believe that whether it's not very clear whether Megan actually had booze or not, but we talked about how she may go about trying to confirm that, rather than saying that I know that this happened. So that was one thing we talked about. We also talked about, reacting, whether it was a boy or a girl. So if it's a boy, you react differently. If it's a girl, you react differently, because different things, scenarios are going on in your mind. If it's a girl, then you have other worries as well, as you're just having booze or some drugs. So, and I'm having boys myself, I'm thinking, okay, but even if you have a boy, if they're the ones who are actually perpetrating whatever, you need to be worried about that too. So what is it that we're teaching our boys? That you need to behave in respect of people. So that's something also we talked about. Another point that came up was, what if Megan wasn't the one who came and told you this and you found out this through somebody else? How do you deal with that, and how do you, make sure that in the future that you minimize it at least, that you have open communication with your own child and you don't have to hear it from someone else. Another point was that you need to talk to them, not coming down on them as a parent, but at their level, so that they are able to communicate more distinctly. Am I getting anything else? We had some great conversations, so thank you very much.
That's great. I'm so glad to see how everybody engaged with the exercise. It's always interesting to me, each group kind of has their own personality of how they perceive the task and then how they work together. And I think so far everyone has done a great job. I was very proud of our group too. So what we really focused on first was what our immediate reaction was. That we had, some parents said that their heart stopped when they heard that line that their child was passed out on a sofa. Like, she didn't know how she was going to go forward with the conversation with having such a physical, visceral reaction. Feeling scared for your child, not knowing details, not knowing has this happened before, how many times has it happened, what exactly happened at this party. We just stopped our conversation right there. So there were a lot of questions that our parents had. We felt more protective of our child, like, oh no, we are not letting you out of our sight. And that, interestingly, I was putting into a developmental context that for some of our kids who are already in high school, they will be having to make these decisions and getting themselves out of situations like this, keeping themselves safe in 2 to 4 years. They'll be on college campuses where they have to make better decisions. So we talked about, our instinct is to protect them and keep them from this situation. We wondered why they hadn't come to us earlier. Why did it take all of this to happen and her passing out before we had heard anything about it? Now, interestingly, we did have some positive thoughts, which was great. We felt satisfied that she had actually come to talk to us. And that's really where I wanted to focus all of our attention on, is as you develop these skills with your kids, as you practice this active listening, is to focus on those small steps. Because I want you all to take away 2 messages tonight. One is, you need to keep practicing this active listening with your kids, okay? So when your kid even opens up for 1 minute, 30 seconds, more than they did the day before, praise them. They are waiting to hear praise from us at this age, believe it or not. There's still that 6-year-old who was like waiting for mommy to clap for him. They still have that in them. They don't tell us, okay? And we also as parents feel better, like, wow, my kid felt comfortable enough to come and tell me this. So start there. Be aware of what they're doing well and what you're doing well as parents. The second message is, how are you going to teach them to problem solve? So our instincts as parents was to go and solve that problem. You are not going to Stacy's house again. You will, be home by 9 o'clock every day. All of your extracurricular activities are canceled. We are going to do everything we can to make sure our kids, but is that realistic? And once they leave at 18, it's not realistic at all. So how can we help Megan make a better decision next time? And what we need is honesty with our kids, that we're not here to say this is okay, right? That we want to know more information as parents because we want to keep you safe. So I want to go and talk to Dad with you about this, right? Because you as a parent, if you're in a 2-family home, you want to have backup for something this serious. If you don't have a parent, another parent who you could rely on, or a grandparent, use the resources in the school. I want to go and talk to the school counselor about this. And the number one thing at this age is to respect their independence as evolving individuals. So asking permission. Is it okay if we go and talk to your counselor tomorrow about this part? No, mommy. You're going to get all of my friends in trouble. No way. Okay. So take a step back. Can you get them to at least agree to give you a little more detail? Has this happened before? And the tone of our voice, pay attention to how you're responding to them. Are you scaring them away from responding to you, or are you inviting more information? That mom is trying to get information, keep reminding them, mom's trying to get information, dad's trying to get information, because we want you to be safe. And as your parent, I feel this is my responsibility. So help me out. Help me be a better parent, right? Get them on your side too. And like I said, keep practicing these skills. Aruna has some great resources available at the end of your packets. If any of you want to discuss this more, or problem solve your own individual situations, I'm available. Aruna can get you in touch with me through phone as well as email. So reach out. I know we're running kind of late on time, but I wanted to ask, did people have any other reactions to this exercise that they wanted to share? Was it helpful? Are there ways that we could improve? Is there anything that comes to mind? Yes.
One thing that comes to mind, I'm just thinking back with my own mother, is
my mother was Houdini, and she could get things out of you like you would not believe. And I was just thinking about the exercise with Stacy. She probably would have said, like if I said, Stacy's house in the basement, and she doesn't know who Stacy is, but she would have probably said, oh, you mean Stacy that lives over by the high school? And I would just say, oh, no, Mom, Stacy that lives at 10 Hopkins Court and Plainborough Road. And she would just draw stuff out. Before I would know it, I had confessed the whole thing. She had the whole story. So you have to learn to be Houdini. That's the only other thing I want to share.
We should not apologize for being tricky with our kids when it comes to their safety and well-being, right? That's great. Thank you for sharing. Are there any other responses? Okay. So please do fill out your evaluations. If you have feedback for us, please write them down. And we look forward to doing this with you again sometime soon. So thank you again.